Plan 17 was the name of a scheme of mobilization and concentration that was adopted by the French Conseil Supérieur.The Guerre from 1912 to 1914, to be put into effect by the French army in the event of war between France and Germany. Though it was not a prescribed narrative for the campaign or battle plan, the deployment made possible a prompt invasion of Germany and/or Belgium before Germany could mobilize its reserves, simultaneous to a Russian invasion of East Prussia. The plan was implemented from the 7th of August 1914, with disastrous consequences for the French, who were defeated in the Battle of the Frontiers at a cost of 329,000 casualties. The French northern armies were forced into a retreat as far as the Marne River, where in the First Battle of the Marne, the German armies were defeated and forced back to the Aisne River. Background: from 1874 to 1880, General Raymond Adolphe Ecoute Rivières oversaw the construction of the Ecoute Rivières system, a line of fortresses 65 kilometers long from Belfort to Epinal and another line 65 kilometers long from Toul to Verdun, about 40 kilometers back from the frontier. The river Meuse flows northwards from Toul to Verdun, Mézières and Givet on the Belgian border, and there is a tributary of the Moselle between Belfort and Epinal, that run near parallel to the 1871 to 1919 French-German border. The Trawey de Charmes, 70 kilometers wide in the line of fortifications, was left between Epinal and Toul, east of which was Nancy, 12 kilometers from the German frontier. A second series of fortifications to prevent the main line being outflanked was built in the south, from Langes to Dijon, and in the north from La Fère to Reims and from Valenciennes to Maubeuge. Although for financial reasons these defenses were not complete in 1914. During the 1870s, the French army drew up concentration plans according to a defensive strategy, which exploited the Musen branches of the Moselle, which were almost parallel to the 1871 border. The completion of the fortress lines between Belfort and Verdun in the late 1880s and railway building from the interior to the border, gave the French army the means to contemplate a defensive-offensive strategy, in which a German attack would be repulsed and then followed up by a counterattack. In August 1891, Plan She was completed, with an option for an offensive as well as a defensive strategy from the start, to exploit the opportunity created by the improvement in relations between the Third Republic and the Russian Empire. The Franco-Russian alliance led to Plan 12 in February 1892, in which an immediate invasion of Germany was considered possible, but from Plan She to Plan 16, the main strategy remained defensive-offensive, French attacks being expected after an initial defense against a German invasion. In 1888, the French began to study a possible German offensive north of Verdun through Belgium, and Plan 12 was written with a contingency for a German breach of Belgian neutrality. In 1904, this was given more attention after a German sold a copy of the German concentration plan to French intelligence and described mobilization methods and war plans. Using this windfall and other sources of information, the French adapted Plan 15 in 1906, to be ready for a German invasion of Belgium, and subsequent plans contained increases in the forces to be assembled to the north and northeast of Verdun. Plan 16 of March 1909 anticipated a German enveloping maneuver through Luxembourg and Belgium, after the findings of a 1908 analysis by General Henry de Lacroix, in which he dwelt on the German preference for enveloping maneuvers and predicted that two German armies would march through eastern Belgium, around the northern flank of the French fortress zone, one to emerge from the Ardennes at Verdun and the other other at Sedan. Ducrot wanted to improve the prospects of the usual defensive-offensive strategy by assembling a new Sixth Army near Chalon-sur-Marne, 80 kilometers west of Verdun, easily to move towards Toul in the center, Verdun on the left to the vicinity of Sedan and Mézières, behind the northern flank. Prelude. Concentration plans. 1911 to 1914. General Victor Constant Michel, Vice President of the Conseil Supérieur de la Guerre in 1910, was more convinced than Leclerc of a German move through Belgium, because of the obstacle of French defences in Lorraine, the terrain in eastern Belgium and German railway building. Michel thought that the Germans would make the main effort in central Belgium and that covering a longer front would need the organization of French reserve units and integration with the active army. The Council rejected his view in 1911, which caused Michel to resign, as he considered that deployment from Belfort to Mézières and an offensive towards Antwerp, Brussels and Namur as the only possible way to respond. Joseph Joffre was eventually appointed, and the functions of Vice President of the Council and Chief of Staff of the Army were combined. In October 1911, a strategic assessment was delivered as part of a comprehensive review conducted from 1911-1912. Joffre had rewritten Plan 16 by the 6th of September, increasing the number of troops on the Belgian frontier by shifting forces from the Italian border and incorporating second line and reserve units into the front line. The Fifth Army was to assemble further left to Mézières, and the Sixth Army was to move closer to Verdun and the Belgian border west of Luxembourg. The amended version of Plan 16 put 7th Corps close to Belgium, which guarded against a German advance around Verdun or as far as Verdun or Mézières, and Joffre increased emphasis on an immediate offensive. Joffre continued to work on the plan and the possibility of a German move through Belgium, in which three alternatives were inferred: that the Germans would respect Belgian and Luxembourgeois neutrality and attack the Belfort, Epinal and Toul-Verdun lines, or advance through Luxembourg in the vicinity of Verdun, then make a smaller attack into Belgium or defend in Lorient and attack through Belgium. The third possibility was considered likely, because the French knew that a recent German wargame had used the German fortifications around Metz and Arneville. German improvements to the fortifications at Metz and Arneville led Joffre to believe that the Germans certainly would attack through Belgium, and also that Belgium was the only place where France could fight a decisive battle against Germany. On the 9th of January 1912, the Conseil Supérieur de la Guerre agreed that the French army could enter Belgium, but only when news had arrived that the Germans had already done so. The Council also considered industrial mobilization and the slow speed of the development of heavy artillery, and agreed to increase the ammunition stock from 1,280 shells per gun to 1,500. Soon afterwards, command of the French army was centralized by abolishing the Army Chief of Staff and vesting the powers in Joffre as Chief of the General Staff, but Joffre's attempts to gain permission to ignore Belgian neutrality were rebuffed. An offensive strategy required an adequate field of operations, and Belgium was the only place where the terrain was suitable, but Belgian and British sensitivities remained paramount. Despite the matter of Belgian neutrality, Joffre remained favorable to an offensive, rather than defensive offensive strategy, and the benefit of compelling the Germans to fight on two fronts. Since 1894, the alliance with Russia had included a convention that both countries would treat Germany as the principal enemy, which was reaffirmed in 1910 and in subsequent staff talks. Joffre indicated that the French army would attack in the northeast, and the desirability of a concurrent Russian offensive, but still considered a French attack in Lorraine a possibility. Plan 17. After the changes to Plan 16 in September 1911, Joffre and the staff took 18 months to revise the French concentration plan, the concept of which was accepted on the 18th of April 1913. Copies of Plan 17 were issued to Army commanders on 7 February 1914 and the final draft was ready on 1 May. The document was not a campaign plan but it contained a statement that the Germans were expected to concentrate the bulk of their army on the Franco-German border and might cross before French operations could begin. The instruction of the Commander-in-Chief was that, whatever the circumstances, it is the Commander-in-Chief's intention to advance with all forces united to the attack of the German armies. The action of the French armies will be developed in two main operations, one on the right in the country between the wooded district of the Vosges and the Moselle below Toul, the other on the left, north of Aisne-Verdun-Metz. The two operations will be closely connected by forces operating on the Haute de Meuse and in the Woevre, and to achieve this, the French armies were to concentrate, ready to attack either side of Metz-Thionville north into Belgium, in the direction of Valognes and Neufchâteau. An alternative concentration area for the 4th and 5th Armies was specified, in case the Germans advanced through Luxembourg and Belgium, but an enveloping attack west of the Meuse was not anticipated. The gap between the 5th Army and the North Sea was covered by territorial units and obsolete fortresses. Aftermath. Battle of the Frontiers. When Germany declared war, France began the execution of Plan 17, with 5 initiatives, now known as the Battle of the Frontiers. The German deployment plan, Aufmarsch-II, included a concentration of German forces on the German-Belgian border. The force was used to execute an offensive into Belgium, to force a decisive battle with the French army, beyond the fortified Franco-German border. Plan 17 was implemented as an offensive into Alsace-Lorraine and Belgium. The French attack into Alsace-Lorraine resulted in worse losses than anticipated, because artillery-infantry cooperation that French doctrine provided for proved insufficient. The attacks of the French forces in southern Belgium were conducted with negligible reconnaissance or artillery support and were repulsed, without preventing the western maneuver of the northern German armies. Within a few days the French were back in the starting positions, having suffered a costly defeat. The Germans advanced through Belgium and northern France against the Belgian, British and French armies and reached an area 30 kilometers to the northeast of Paris, without managing to trap the Allied armies and force a decisive battle on them. The German advance outran its supplies and Joffre was able to use French railways to move the retreating armies and regroup behind the river Marne, and within the Paris fortified zone, faster than the Germans could pursue. The French defeated the faltering German advance with a counter-offensive at the First Battle of the Marne, assisted by the British. Helmut von Moltke the Younger, chief of the German General Staff, had tried to apply the offensive strategy of Aufmarsch-I to the inadequate western deployment of Aufmarsch-II to counter the French offensive of Plan 17. In 2014, Holmes wrote, Moltke followed the trajectory of the Schlieffen Plan, but only up to the point where it was painfully obvious that he would have needed the army of the Schlieffen Plan to proceed any further along these lines. Lacking the strength and support to advance across the lower Seine, his right wing became a positive liability, caught in an exposed position to the east of Fortress Paris. Analysis. The French offensive was defeated in a few days. On the right, the 1st and 2nd Armies advanced on the 14th of August and were back at their jumping-off points on the 20th of August. The offensive of the 3rd and 4th Armies was defeated from 21 to 23 August and the 5th Army was defeated on the Sambre and forced to retreat. During the same period, Joffre's strategy had failed due to an underestimation of the German armies and the dispersion of the French offensive effort. With a large German force operating in Belgium, the German centre had appeared to be vulnerable to the Third and Fourth Armies. The mistaken impression of the size of the German force in Belgium or its approach route was not as significant as the faulty information about the strength of the German armies opposite the Third and Fourth Armies. Joffre laid blame on others and claimed that the French infantry had failed to show offensive qualities, despite outnumbering the German armies at the most vulnerable point, a claim that he called pure balderdash. The reality was that many of the French casualties were said to have come from an excess of offensive spirit, and on the 23rd of August, General Pierre Raffi concluded that the infantry had attacked without artillery preparation as supporting fire during the battle. Early on the 24th of August, Joffre ordered a withdrawal to a line from Verdun to Mézières and Maubeuge and began to transfer troops from the east, opposite the German border, to the western flank. The French armies were to destroy railway facilities and inflict as many casualties as possible on the German armies while retreating. Preparatory to resuming the offensive, two strategic alternatives were possible: to attack the eastern flank of the First Army or to envelop the western flank of all the German armies. On the 25th of August, Joffre issued General Instruction No. 2 for a withdrawal to a line from Verdun to Reims and Amiens and the assembly of 2 corps and 4 reserve divisions near Amiens to carry out the envelopment operation. Joffre called for much greater integration of the infantry and artillery and for more tactical dispersal of infantry to nullify German firepower. Casualties. In the world crisis, Winston Churchill used figures from French 1920 parliamentary records to give French casualties from the 5th of August to the 5th of September 1914 of 329,000 killed, wounded and missing. Churchill recorded German casualties from August to November as 677,440 and British casualties from August to September of 29,598 men. By the end of August, the French army had suffered 75,000 dead, of whom 27,000 had been killed on the 22nd of August. French casualties for the first month of the war were 260,000, of which 140,000 occurred during the last 4 days of the Battle of the Frontiers. In 2009, Herwig recorded German casualties in the Sixth Army in August of 34,598, with 11,476 men killed and 28,957 more in September, with 6,687 men killed. The Seventh Army had 32,054 casualties in August, with 10,328 men killed and 31,887 casualties in September, with 10,384 men killed. In the First Army in August there were 19,980 casualties, including 2,863 men killed, and in the Second Army 26,222 casualties. In the last 10 days of August, the First Army had 9,644 casualties and the Second Army had losses of 15,693 men. Herweg wrote that the French army did not publish formal casualty lists, but that the official history Les Armes Écoutes Françaises dans la Grande Guerre gave losses of 206,515 men for August and 213,445 for September.